And what are Catherine's best moments from 2023? Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential, the best weekly royal show, brought to you every week. The experts this week on our panel are the Daily Mail's royal editor Rebecca English, the Mail on Sunday's royal correspondent Natasha Livingston, and royal author and broadcaster Victoria Murphy. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Who needs the men?
I know.
All girls today. We love that. Now, a reminder that if you enjoy our show, please like and subscribe to our free channel to be reminded whenever a new episode arrives. Well, there's lots to come, including a fantastic montage of Catherine and Robert Hardman telling us about the exclusive audience he enjoyed with the King. But Rebecca, let's start with the annual pre-Christmas Christmas lunch held every year at Windsor Castle. This is quite an important one for the family, isn't it?
It is, and I've just got to say, apologise for my voice, and I do stress this is not.
You sound like Gollum today.
This is not through excess Christmas partying; it's through excess pre-Christmas work. Unfortunately,
that's her story, and she's sticking to it. We're sorry. I hope you're feeling all right.
Yeah, I don't feel all right. I just sound terrible. But yeah, so every year the monarch hosts a big Christmas lunch, Sandringham turkey, crackers, the lot, for the extended royal family, because there are a lot of them. When you include all the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, the second cousins, twice removed. Yes,
I saw a picture of Freddie Windsor and Sophie Winkleman, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about them. I forgot they were royal, yeah.
Yeah, and their kids. So they always used to hold it at Buckingham Palace. Last year they held it at Windsor Castle. This year they held it at Windsor Castle as well. The downside is we don't get to see as many pictures because a lot of people are on the estate and the photographers can only take pictures of people as they're coming in from a public road. So you don't get to see, unfortunately, this year the Waleses or their children, for example, because they can just stroll along from their house to go and see Grandpa. But it's just a chance for them to enjoy Christmas with all those that they can't invite to Sandringham every year.
And we get to see who won the fight over who's the designated driver, don't we? Because I saw Edward driving, saw Freddie driving.
That's a good point, that, actually. Yeah, exactly.
Back is the main thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was thinking if I was having lunch with the King, I'd want to have a tipple. So.
Well, maybe no one wants to put their foot in it and they want to do the exact opposite, joke.
Maybe. Now, Victoria, Christmas itself, though, will be at Sandringham. What do you think we can expect?
Yeah, very traditional, big royal Christmas at Sandringham. We're going to see all the usual things, the royal family walking to church for the 11 a.m. service at the church on the Sandringham estate, and then obviously the King's speech, 3 p.m, pre-recorded, of course. I think, we saw last year that King Charles was very keen to keep things looking, I felt, very similar to how it did during Queen Elizabeth's reign. The royals were walking to church, the makeup was very similar. I think this year there's a possibility that we might see more evidence of the new era. It's been reported that Queen Camilla's children and grandchildren are going to be joining the royal family at Sandringham this year. If they did walk publicly to church, obviously we would see them as part of that party. The Buckingham Palace hasn't confirmed anything on that front, but if they were there, that would definitely sort of cement this idea more that we're in King Charles's era now and the makeup looks different.
Natasha, now Charles didn't have to have Christmas at Sandringham, but do you think he sensed, I think Victoria's probably alluding to there, that the continuity is important for the country as well?
Yeah, I think monarchy is familiar and it's comforting for a lot of people. Christmas is all about traditions and, seeing pictures of the royal family kind of in their outfits on Christmas Day, as you say, going to church. That's things that people are used to seeing. They're used to watching, the King or Queen's speech in the past. And I think it's really important that they do continue to do that. One thing that I think is interesting is that the decision to kind of keep Christmas at Sandringham. Obviously the Queen had Christmas at Windsor during the pandemic, but then they had an armed intruder on Christmas Day that tried to break in.
Gosh, that's right.
Yeah, so maybe that's kind of tainted memories of Windsor, on Christmas Day itself. So that's also a reason to maybe go back to traditional Christmas at Sandringham.
Do you have an alibi for that day, Rebecca?
I was working.
Yeah, well, again, that's your story.
Yeah. One thing actually I was going to say, Victoria alluded to the kind of suggestion there's been a bigger Christmas. I've checked that out. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we might see 1 or 2 people extra from Queen Camilla's family, but what she tends to do is do the family celebrations Christmas Eve, because obviously that's when they gather according to Queen Victoria's German custom on Christmas Eve to exchange presents. They'll have Christmas Day, and then she normally heads off to spend time with her big family on Boxing Day, and that's my understanding is that's what they're going to do. But they will stay in Sandringham until the New Year, so they will continue the Queen's custom on that. They'll have, you know, New Year shoots, and then the Queen and King will go up to Scotland for January.
One of my big learnings about the royal family when they gather, I learnt from The Crown in the first series when they were playing Dib Dab Dob or whatever it was. Do you remember when they were sort of like having like pen marks on their faces? What sort of games do you think they play?
They do play charades, I know that. It is silly game territory and silly present territory, that's for certain.
With the little paper hats from the crackers.
Yeah, they do all that. Oh, sorry, my voice.
Yeah, there you go. Then everyone gets to wear one. Fascinating. I'd love to be a fly on a wall. But in less happy news, do you think your voice is going to hold out, Rebecca, to tell us about Prince Andrew, who's been back in the news? What's it about this time?
Yeah, Prince Andrew might be lucky that my voice gives out before I tell the rest of what's going on with his sad and sorry life at the moment. But yeah, it's more uncomfortable news from Andrew. So a judge in the US has ruled that 170 associates and also victims of Jeffrey Epstein can be named in the new year, subject to appeals. Now this relates to a case that Virginia Giuffre, who's probably one of Epstein's most famous victims, had taken against Ghislaine Maxwell. That was settled, but the media have argued that a lot of sealed documents should not remain sealed forever, especially when some of those people's names already come out and victims have been chosen to be able to be named. And one of those is a lady who claimed in an incident involving Prince Andrew that she was effectively groped. I mean, she was 21, there's no allegations of a criminal nature, but it's pretty distasteful. And she is one of those people whose testimony should be made public in the new year. So I think something Andrew had been hoping to forget, he will be very publicly reminded of again.
Well, and I think we should obviously remind everybody that Andrew has denied all allegations made against him. Natasha, one of the problems for him and his family is that it just keeps coming back.
Yeah, so the first story about this was in 2011, and it was the News of the World, and it was the picture of Prince Andrew with Epstein walking around Central Park, and this was after Epstein had been released for his offences, so he was already very much a kind of tainted man, and you know, it was first known that Andrew was kind of continuing his associations with him, and then it was after that it was the Mail on Sunday that did the stories about connecting with them, Virginia Giuffre, and then, you know, it still rolled on, and obviously it was the 2019 Newsnight interview that just kind of like breathed fire on the situation, and it just keeps rolling on.
Victoria, this week, one of the King's biographers was calling on the King to cut Andrew off over all of this mess, but that doesn't really seem like Charles's style, does it?
Well, also, what does it really mean to cut him off? I mean, he can't prevent the fact that he's his brother. There's nothing he can do about that. And I think Charles has indicated that he isn't going to change anything from where we sort of landed at the end of Queen Elizabeth's reign, which is that Andrew is absolutely not a working member of the royal family. He's not represented by Buckingham Palace. He's not going to appear publicly at all on behalf of the monarchy, but he is still a member of the family, and we'll see him from time to time as a result of that. So, for example, over the last year, he was at the Easter service with the family, he was at the coronation service with the family, and he's managed to do that over the last year without a huge amount of controversy around his appearances, without that really dominating the narrative of those events. But as Rebecca said, if this comes back again next year, at the beginning of next year, then will he even be able to make those family appearances without increased controversy? And will there be more of a spotlight on things that have kind of gone under the radar a little bit, such as the fact that he still lives in a royal residence? And those are the kinds of things that next year, if this comes back into the spotlight, there could be more questions around that.
Well, we don't have too long to wait for January to see developments on that one, do we? Well, there's lots more to come, including questions over the Sussex's future. Before that, though, to your thoughts. And it was another extraordinarily busy week in our comments section. More than 3,500 of you shared your thoughts. Like So Francine, who wrote, As an American, I hope that the Princess of Wales shakes her head and carries on doing the real business of supporting the children and people in need. Dismiss the cartoon that is the people in California. Meanwhile, Kim Miller agrees with Richard Eden that the King should strip Harry and Meghan of their titles. The King needs to remove all titles afforded Harry and Meghan and their succession to the throne. The King needs to consider the future of England above his love for his son. MB concurs, saying Henry wanted out, so he should be all out. No Duke title, no Prince title, no line of succession. It's astonishing that he gets to keep any of them. It undermines the whole monarchy. And Lorraine Ward says there's a precedent that the King could follow. As for stripping the Princess titles from Harry and his family, Queen Marguerite did it in Denmark and changed the rules so that only those in the direct line to the throne will have those titles in the future. No reason why the British monarchy can't do the same. Wow, please keep those comments coming in below. We love them, we love reading them, and we love reading them out. We'll do as many as we possibly can. Moving on now, Rebecca, another week, another video from the Sussexes. Tell us about this one.
This one caught, I think, everyone by surprise. It suddenly popped up on Instagram, and it was Meghan, I don't know if the word to use is appearing in a video to publicise Clever, which is this kind of vegan coffee brand that she's invested in, and it shows her, it's a kind of comedy skit, her in the background of various scenarios, is pretending to be an intern, handing the boss her coffee, and kind of laughing and taking centre stage at the end. It's gone pretty viral. I think you said it was trending on Twitter,
she was trending on X this week,
X,
so it certainly attracted a lot of attention.
It's just Twitter.
I know, yeah.
And it's one of these things that sparks debate again, because of course it would have absolutely been frowned on as a member of the royal family, a working member of the royal family, had she done that. And of course this is a private company she's promoting as well, and it goes back to this whole idea of why the Queen effectively stripped Harry and Meghan of their HRHs when they are being involved in commercial operations like this.
Do you mean there's a believable intern?
Well, she certainly stole the show by the end, which I don't think is what the interns are supposed to do. But yeah, I mean, as Rebecca said, it's this question of cashing in and what is cashing in, and the Sussexes, I don't think, are ever going to escape those allegations while they have the profiles that they have because of the royal family. It reminded me of when Peter Phillips got into trouble for using, the profile that he has. He sold milk to China. He appeared in an advert. Yes.
That was so strange.
A few years ago.
Cringe.
Yeah, and how did you get that gig, Peter? And so this question, even though he's not a working royal, as the Sussexes aren't, this question of what is it acceptable for people to do when they have these family connections, and so yeah, but yes, it's definitely would be very controversial if they were working royals, but they're obviously not anymore.
We're available, aren't we, for advertising?
I wonder
products.
what we could advertise.
Yeah, anything.
Sweets.
We've got a lot of viewers on Palace Confidential. I like milk.
Strepsils for me.
Strepsils. Danos. I don't think you get that
exactly.
anymore. Yeah. Anyway, so just keep naming brands. But Victoria, interesting about Harry and Meghan this week, though. There was, I think that you could argue that 2024 looks a little bit uncertain for them. There was this quote from the business magazine Forbes that I thought was super harsh, where they said the Sussexes were, quote, a compelling case study for Harvard Business School on the ultimate brand buzz failure. I mean, burn.
I mean, it was a very harsh article. It compared them unfavourably to the Kardashians. It said the Kardashians had forged a very strong brand through authenticity. And I think what I feel it points to is what we've seen happen over the last 12 months or so, is that the narrative around Harry and Meghan and the criticism of them, there's been a much more kind of globally sceptical attitude and critical attitude towards them in the last 12 months. I think people and publications who weren't criticising them before have done so in the last 12 months or so. And so they start 2024 sort of trying to kind of claw that back, really. And the question is, can they? And it feels like they need to do something differently to what they've been doing in the past 12 months if they want that discussion to shift.
It's interesting, isn't it, Rebecca? Do you think there is a clear plan? I mean, even the description in Endgame about the plan was vague.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not part of the kind of Sussex inner circles. I'm not privy to their thinking, but I think even those who are don't really know what those plans are. They keep on hearing about, we're going to be doing big things, there's going to be a complete shift. I think I've referred to before what I think is their kind of very arrogant statement. They've done the last of their look-back projects now, i.e. the ones that are attacking the royal family, and now it's all about looking forward. But in doing what they've done, they've lost so much credibility. There's a lot for them to claw back, and it'll be really interesting to see how toxic they are or not as a brand, as a commercially attractive brand now, which is what they want to be. I think the only things we've heard about are them being handed a production deal by Netflix for a film. We've obviously got the kind of individual investments they've done, such as the Clever brand and Harry with Better Up, the online mental health group. But apart from that, there's not a lot.
Do we know if that video has shifted units of Clever coffee?
Well, it's a good question, Jo. I can't answer it.
Yeah,
But
we'll look into that for next week. Natasha, a quick one now on the new nickname for the Prince of Wales that was revealed this week.
Yeah, it feels like the sort of phrase that I shouldn't be saying in daylight, but yes, it's 1 Pint Willie.
1 Pint Willie.
Willie, of course, being William's nickname.
Please explain.
So it was Mike Tyndall on a podcast, and he was basically talking about nicknames that he has with Zara, which is quite sweet. It was like Munchkin and things like that. But yeah, one he has for William is 1 Pint Willie, and it is basically because he can't take very much alcohol. He's a bit of a lightweight. So, you know, it's a bit of an insight into potentially what the Royal Christmas will be like, you know, who will be downing the sherries and who won't be. And it's quite a different portrayal to his recent depiction in The Crown, where he's really seen as a sort of like partying prince who's, you know, downing spirits and, you know, but really, you know, he apparently only ever has one drink or holds one drink well. Maybe
it's like with me, you just lose it with age sometimes, I think. It's like I'm now
I feel that, yeah.
I'm one jug Joe.
It did make me laugh though, because Zara kind of went, "Oh, you're going to be in trouble now." So you can imagine the conversation over the Christmas dinner. But to be fair to Mike, he made clear he was saying that as someone who's a professional rugby player, and that comes with quite a hard drinking culture. So he was kind of trying to say there's nothing wrong with it, but this is my very teasing nickname. And of course he was doing the podcast for Rob Burrows, who's very sadly been affected by motor neurone disease. And I suspect there was an element of just trying to get the podcast a bit of publicity for such a good cause.
Which has worked.
So I don't think he pitched it okay. It doesn't really do William's reputation that much time.
I mean, I think it's a good thing.
It's not a bad thing to be a massive drinker.
Yeah. If he was like, he drinks all the rugby players under the table, then that maybe would be.
And I think actually, William's got a pretty good sense of humour about stuff like that. He'll take a lot of that on the chin, I think.
Yeah, just not dog bowls and necklaces. Not so much a good sense of humour with that.
No.
Yeah. Well, moving on. Now, Richard Eden, I know you're missing him. He's off on, it says here, a well-earned winter break. I don't know. Does he work that hard out, Richard? No, he does. He deserves it. I know you're missing him. He'll be back soon. But he has still written his royal newsletter for you. You can sign up to that at the link below. And in it, he praises the new Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Edward and Sophie, as his unsung heroes of the year. Victoria, they are very much sort of booked and busy, and much of their work does go under the radar, doesn't it?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they don't do the same number of engagements as Charles or Anne do, for example, in a year, but they are consistently very busy. And yeah, I did a profile on Sophie a few years ago, actually, and covered several of her engagements. And somebody much cleverer than me, my former editor, came up with the headline that she was the royal family's secret weapon. And it kind of caught on for a bit, because I think people do sort of identify with this idea that she's plugged away and created, you know, quite a substantial reputation for herself for the work that she has done. And she's worked on some really interesting causes. But so I think they'll carry on doing that. There's very much a place for them, particularly now that there are fewer working royals. But I do think it would be kind of over-egging the pudding to suggest that their roles are going to grow or increase in some way. I think they'll carry on doing what they're doing.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because Rebecca, Richard also calls on King Charles to upgrade their title to a hereditary one, to bring their son James, Earl of Wessex, into the firm. Can you see that happening?
Yeah, I hate to disappoint my good pal Richard, but I just don't think that's ever going to happen, because I think I also said on the programme before, the Dukedom of Edinburgh is basically Scotland's most prestigious title, and James, who's now Earl of Wessex, is 15th in line to the throne. So if they were to keep it in that Edinburgh/Wessex family, it would become further and further removed from the monarchy as George, Charlotte and Louis go on to have their own children. You know, you can potentially see James becoming 20th, even 30th in line to the throne. And they wouldn't want that to happen with the Edinburgh title.
Right.
But obviously they promised it, Prince Philip promised it to Edward, so they've eventually honoured that promise. It took them quite a while to do so. Kings eventually honoured that promise, but I think that's why they will want to take it back. And of course, Sophie has made the point very clearly in interviews that she's not sure her children even want to follow her into the family as working royals. That's why they followed in Princess Anne's footsteps, not taking HRH titles for their children, because they wanted them to decide their own futures. And having a hereditary title like that might make them feel beholden to the crown, and they might have to take a particular path when they want to take another one.
So interesting. So do you think that that title will eventually go to one of Catherine and William's children?
I think it will.
Yeah.
I think there's a very good chance it will go to Louis. Charlotte's been rumoured as well, and it would be great to have a Duchess of Edinburgh, wouldn't it? It doesn't mean it has to go to a male line, especially as the late Queen changed all those laws around primogeniture. But yeah, I think it would probably go to Charlotte or Louis. That would be my guess. Actually, Charlotte could be a new Princess Royal. That would be great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's what she would be, Princess Royal. But yeah, I mean, you could have a title as well. There was some suggestion that Anne might get the title Duchess of Edinburgh.
Oh, really?
That was mooted before it was eventually given to Edward.
yeah,
Is that seen as more prestigious than Princess Royal?
No, because I think the Princess Royal was something so personal from the Queen, Elizabeth, to
Yeah.
her daughter. And actually, I've always said I really see Charlotte as like a little mini-me, Princess Anne. I love the way she's like in charge of her brothers, and I love the kind of slight eye-rolling when they do anything naughty.
But don't you think
I just think she's got a great streak of Princess
I think there's
Anne in
definitely
her.
echoes of the Charles and Anne dynamic in the
Yeah.
George and Charlotte dynamic. Definitely,
100%,
yeah.
Well, that's really sweet. But also, I really think that Charlotte looks like Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, they do. And obviously
Yeah.
we've seen in the last week a picture that was released by Kensington Palace of the Princess of Wales when she was, I think, almost 2. And everyone's saying how much that she looked like Louis. Or
Louis,
looked
yeah.
like
Yeah.
her, I should say. So it's lovely to see those family resemblances. A lot of people have commented on Charlotte and Queen Elizabeth, I have to say.
Wow. It has been an extraordinary year for the royal family, and in particular, King Charles. Well, this Christmas, the BBC are making a special programme about his first year on the throne, and the man following him for the show is Daily Mail columnist Robert Hardman. He's been telling us about His Majesty's 2023.
Well, I think from the very start of the new reign, everyone was thinking, what sort of a king is Charles going to be? I certainly was thinking that. I'm sure millions of other people were. And as someone who writes books and documentaries, I thought this is a very important moment in royal history. It's got to be chronicled. It's got to be, it needs to be captured. We put together a plan for an observational documentary. It's a look at what happens when you take on the most extraordinary job in the world, and we're just standing there capturing it. And I think people will be absolutely fascinated by it. Oxford Films and I spent basically the best part of a year following the King and the Queen on their travels around the country and watching the build-up to the first coronation in the lifetime of most people in this country. I'd never seen one before. And no one's ever seen a coronation in the way they'll see it in this film. No one's ever seen, the rehearsals, the behind the scenes, the build-up, what it's like afterwards as the King and Queen make it back home. It's a bit like sort of after the wedding service. It's definitely got that sort of atmosphere. I think all these royal events, whatever it may be, it's always tougher on those who haven't grown up around it. From the day he was born, Prince Charles was always accepted that one day he would be king. So that's grown up at the back of his mind. But for those who marry into the family, a lot of these events can be quite sort of stressful. I don't think anything can be more stressful than actually being crowned, with all that goes with that. I think people always think of coronations, because the last coronation, of course, Elizabeth II, it was just her being crowned. Prince Philip wasn't crowned, because we don't crown prince consorts in this country, but we do crown queen consorts. So Queen Camilla was the first Queen consort to actually sit there and have a crown placed on her head and be anointed, because Queen consorts are anointed too. First time that's happened since 1937. Queen Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, you know, so, I mean, almost nobody can remember that. So it was a very big deal for her, and I think she did it with great aplomb. Normally, if somebody's parent dies, you give them some sort of breathing space and they can kind of go and grieve and adjust in private. But if you're the king, it's the complete opposite. You have to do everything in public, and you actually got people in tears coming to you because they want you to console them. And it carries on like that. You know, the business of monarchy, as you'll see in our film. I mean, here come the red boxes. I mean, these don't slow down just because, you know, there's been a change of reign. And I think, I hope that the feeling people will get from this film is that here's a king who's very comfortable being monarch. There's not a lot of you know, self-doubt or finding one's way. I mean, I think it's a monarchy. I often say this, monarchy sort of stands for continuity, and I think you see a lot of that in this film.
You can watch Charles III, The Coronation Year on BBC One in the UK and iPlayer from Boxing Day. Now, if there's one thing we know our viewers cannot get enough of, it's the Princess of Wales. Here are some of our favourite pictures of her on engagements from this year. Some beautiful pictures there. A reminder that we have a very special Christmas episode of Palace Confidential next Thursday, so make sure you check that out. My thanks to Rebecca, Victoria and Natasha, and to you for watching, and from everybody at Palace Confidential, we want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. Rebecca.
And I think from Richard and I, we both want to say thank you to everyone for watching. We love seeing your comments every week, good or bad. I think that's what's brilliant about
There are bad comments.
I think, you know, people that disagree with us, and that's great, because that is what Palace Confidential is about. It's about having a chat between people who've got an interest in the royal family, and everyone's going to have a different opinion.
I think absolutely right.
And
Yeah.
Richard's not here to say thank you, so I just want to say thank you from both of us as well.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you to you for watching, and have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.